Hey there, fierce leaders, and welcome back to my channel. So have you or someone in your life lost someone that they love? So this could be a father, a mother, a sibling, a grandparent, a close friend, a husband, a wife, or honestly, you could be someone who's gone through a really, really rough divorce or big breakup. Well, if this is resonant for you, then this video, I'm really going to share my specific vulnerable story, and this is honestly, frankly, a growth edge for me, of losing my father, who I was so close to, and just what I wish I knew when I got the call 5 years ago, actually today, that he had passed. And I just found through my own experience how much I felt like I couldn't find really great resources on exactly how to move forward, how to get my spark back, besides these classic, like, here are the 7 stages of grief, and, always just, these kind of classic tips I found online of just like take time to reminisce your past with them and celebrate that. I just found that I was really struggling to really move forward, to like want to love again, to really want to open myself up in new ways, because I really struggled with this fear of losing someone in my life again, or just how did I want to be present? How could I be present when this parent in my life who had been such a pillar was no longer there to have the phone call, for the hug, or just for that support that I was so used to? So if this is resonant for you or for someone in your life, then keep on watching, and I really hope to make this something that makes you feel connected, feel supported, and actually feeling like you have some practical guidance on how you can help yourself in feeling guided and supported. And also, just more than anything, I hope you really don't feel alone and can start to see a new connection with this person who mattered so much in your life. All right, so I can already feel it gets me a little emotional, but I will never forget, and I think this is something I hear all the time, I will never forget the day I got the call. It was a Monday. I was at the office. I was having a normal day, and I got a missed call. And I just remember that, nothing in your life prepares you for that, right? Even if my father had been sick for a while, but there were some elements of me preparing myself for maybe getting that call, but there is nothing in the world that still will prepare you for the depth you will feel and the experience you'll feel, I think, and so many people I know when I've spoken to them about this, of when you get that call. So anyways, it was just a normal day. I was at the office, like I said, and I got a missed call from a random number, and kind of pushed it off, ate my lunch, finished some client calls, then went into a conference room to call them back. And let's just say very quickly, in about 2 minutes, I received the news that my father had passed away, and was instantly put on the phone to hear all of the logistics of where he was, all of the police information on, where his body was. And just, it was literally from that moment forward, it was just nonstop, all these logistics that I didn't even know how to deal with. And I was so fortunate, honestly, because I look back and I had, really good friends, my colleagues I worked with, I was really close to, so I had them come in and support me and just help me to kind of just stay afloat while all of this news and all of this information was coming to me. And I'm sharing my specific story because I think this specific day is something that so many people don't talk about and people feel so stuck in, and it really is, there's nothing like it. And so I think when I look back on that day, it's amazing because it's been 5 years now, but it's even still, right? Instantly there's this emotional connection. And I think this is an important point, because I think the thing that no one tells you is I don't walk around, every day in grief, or I'm not grieving. But I think what's really difficult is oftentimes there's this timeline that's kind of placed around grief, or that you can feel this pressure like there is. And I just really want to cut that stigma of, you can still live, I live a beautifully joyful life, and I feel so supported and so guided in my life today. But it doesn't mean that when I think back to certain days, or when I have certain moments, that I don't get teary-eyed, that I don't get emotional. And so I really wanted to start this by just cutting that stigma of there's no timeline And just because you get teary-eyed at some other point down the line, it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to have like let it go. But also, like, you know, it's really important that we can take what we've learned from these losses, from these experiences, and use them. For me, my father and his life and his legacy has taught me so much about how I want to live my life, the ways I show up as a leader in my life. And, you know, it's really been a period of just acceptance of my journey, of my experience, because the truth is no one in the world will understand your experience. Not your family members, not your loved ones, like no one. You have your own experience and you have every right to experience it the way that works best for you. Now, I'm not saying that if you're stuck in bed, you're really in the depths of the throes of the grief, to just necessarily stay there. I'm a firm believer in find your support. Find people in your life who can really hold you. And honestly, I have to say, a lot of times it can't be your family members and your loved ones. Yes, you want to connect with them and open up spaces for that. But I really think it's essential to find people who are outside, you know, who aren't grieving that loss, and people who can really like hold that space. So I know for me, I highly recommend finding support systems, whether that's through therapy, through community, just really like reaching out to really close friends, like a few that maybe you really can connect with, and ask just for them to be present with you, not for advice or solutions, but just really for that space. But more than anything, what I really want to share essential in me moving forward has been this. It's that I think a lot of where I got stuck and a lot of why I felt numb shortly after his passing, and for a while actually, for about a year after, because there was so many logistics. No one talks about that, right? There's so many logistics. You've got the funeral to prepare. There's all the logistics of their life and their material items and all of the dynamics that go into, you know, taking care of someone's legacy after they've passed. But more than anything, I think once you kind of get through that period, that's when, for me anyways, the grief really hit. Was, you know, I would think I was pretty numb and just in action mode for that first year, just to kind of get all those things done. And, you know, live my life, work at the tech company I was at. I had inherited his dog. Like, there was a lot of responsibility. But I think really where it came down to, the big one, was about a year later, I really found that that was finally my space where I could go really deep into actually not being numb anymore and not actually being in that space anymore. And so I highly recommend, just for me anyways, what was really helpful was I actually set aside for myself to go to a silent retreat for a few days. And that was essential because in that experience is when I can genuinely say I really met my grief. Like, I met not just like my surface level, my depth, like I met the depths of it. And I think I got kind of the intuition to do that for myself, and I look back and I think that was one of the greatest gifts I ever gave myself. Because if you have any of that emptiness or that numbness or just that feeling like you're really not present, then I think just giving yourself that space to just letting yourself be in it for a minute. For me, I just needed those few days to really be in it. So I think if you can, I highly recommend checking out some sort of a retreat space, or just making some for you in whatever way really resonates for you, an intentional space for you to just be with yourself, to just feel any feelings, and to just be able to express whatever needs to be felt in that time. The other thing is, I think a lot of people don't tell you, but you know, being able to just give yourself space every day to actually just reflect, to write, you know, whether that's in the evening or in the morning. I've seen this with different clients, what's really been helpful. But for me, it was really helpful in my evenings, especially in the midst of it, in the early, like in the year and the 2 years after, to just give myself like 15 minutes a day just to kind of write and just to be with myself. And just so I didn't, you know, so I didn't numb. It was really, actually, to be fair, it was actually after that year, after that silent retreat, is when I really finally saw this. Because I think that first year I was just like, that's when I really didn't know what to do. And I felt so overwhelmed, and I just numbed myself completely and just went into hyper work mode, which I hear all too often. But basically, in the 2 years after, the second year is when I really started to do this practice, and it really helped. Was just every day, like I said, just taking time, 15 minutes every day to just connect with myself, see where I was at, to just give myself space to feel, listen to some music, just be with myself. And honestly, I think people put grief as this like intense experience, but I found that that was just like such a good daily support for myself, to really feel like I wasn't turning myself off, I wasn't numbing myself, but I was just letting myself be reintroduced to my feelings, which I had really stuffed down because I was so afraid of feeling. I was so afraid of feeling the grief because I was afraid I would lose control. I would be I would not be achieving anymore. And I was really afraid of who I would be if I lost control. So I highly recommend that. And lastly, the big thing I also really want to share is that I wish I had known this, which is that I had been told so much, like, look back, like I said, reminisce on your sweet memories with your dad. Really remember all those cute moments with him, right? And I love that too, but I think really what keeps all of us stuck, or what makes us feel stuck, or for me, what really kept me stuck in not being able to move forward in my life, was I needed to grieve the projected future. So what I mean by this is I needed to grieve all of the moments I thought he would be there. And what I mean by this is, like, I think when I meet people who are going through loss, or who are going through grief, or my own experiences, I really shut down for a while. Like, I couldn't really show up in relationships. Like, I just really wasn't present because, for example, right? So here's one example of the projected future is, like, I didn't know, I had never envisioned my life without my dad meeting my potential husband. I had never imagined or had a future in my vision, in my dreams of, like, my dad not walking me down the aisle at my wedding. And so I think what happens is, or I know so many people who have children and now they're so stuck because their mother has passed away and she was their greatest support for, parenting advice, and so it's so hard they can't even show up for their kids anymore because it's just this struggle. Or someone who has just gone through a big divorce and it's really, really hard to kind of move forward because they, like, all of their memories they had perceived of their future were with this person. So it's like they need to actually not grieve the past with them as much, but actually start to just give themselves the space to let go of all of these future events that they thought this person was going to be a huge role and huge pillar in their life for. So what I really recommend here is just giving yourself space. For me, what was really helpful was just writing and just letting myself go through the space of, like, feeling into and, like, giving myself the space to let go of all of those memories that I thought he would be there for. And this has been such a game changer for me because, yes, when I still think about those experiences, I still get a bit teary-eyed. I still get a bit emotional. And don't get me wrong, if I'm at a wedding and I watch a father-daughter dance, there's still moments where I'm like a little bit emotionally triggered sometimes. But I think it's gotten so much better over the years. And I think more than anything, it's just when I finally did that practice, really gave myself the space to feel into that grief, into that specific loss, that's when I was finally able to really move forward, finally able to open up to people. And that's when I was really able to have a new relationship and connection to my dad. I was able to actually see that I'm so connected to him. I'm so connected to his spirit. I'm so connected to the way he still serves as a beautiful pillar in my life, even though he's not physically present. It gave me a whole new way to spiritually connect to him. And I think another huge thing is, it really, like, through his passing, I think I've been given one of my greatest gifts, which is I know through watching his legacy, through watching, my experience with it, just how much when we're living in this day and age, we think, and especially as ambitious and, like, very achieving personalities, we think we need to do these extravagant things to be remembered, to leave the legacy we want. But we often forget that it's the simple moments, it's the sweet moments, it's how we make people feel that really matter. And so that has been a huge reminder and such a key pillar in just driving me as in my leadership path and how I show up in the world, to, like, never take a day for granted, to not go to bed angry. This is a big rule of thumb in my world. I will not go to bed angry. And it's because of this. You really never know. And lastly, that ultimately, with this, I've learned a huge lesson, which is that I can't be too afraid to live my life because we really don't know. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but the reality is it is so true. And there's nothing like a loss to really, if you can kind of flip it and instead getting so caught up in that emptiness and that sadness over it, but really see it as such a beautiful guidance that you have a life right now. You have people in your life right now, and you matter to so many people in your life. So how can you show up? How can you just day by day see that your presence matters the way that person's presence really mattered in your life? And how can you just appreciate the ripple effect of just your presence? And so I'm going to leave it here. This has been kind of just a free form and a bit different of a format than my usual, but I just really wanted to show up because this message was so on my heart, and for so many people I've met and seen how much this experience has really impacted their life and has kept them back, and how much it actually can be huge fuel to be a bolder, more impactful human on this planet at such an important time. So I really just want to end here with saying, I really don't want you to feel alone. And I understand personally the impact of being guided, of being supported. So if there's any way I can show up for you in your life, I know that I will never understand your specific experience of grief. But what I do know is that through my own experience, through really sitting in the depths of my pain, in the depths of my grief, I know that your pain, your grief doesn't scare me. So if there's any way that I can support you on your journey, please feel free to reach out, and please know that there are so many others on this, here on this, in this world, who are going through something similar, and that you really aren't alone. And if you have any further guidance you need, that I can always be here as a support for you. So as always, I hope you have a fierce day and feel empowered to take action, because you, my friend, matter.